10. The 18th emergency. A lady from the lower apartment saw him when she came out to get the mail, leaned over him and asked, "Are you alright?" She was a big woman. Mouse couldn't see her right then, but he could feel the solidness of her presence. He nodded. He tried to get up, thinking she wanted him to get out of the hallway. Still holding his hand over his nose, he managed to get to his feet. "You come on in. Come on in now." She pulled him forward with her strong arms and led him into her kitchen. "What happened to you?" she asked as she was wringing out a cloth at the sink. He just shook his head. "Probably a fight. That's what it was." "A fight?" He nodded. "Either that or you got hit by a freight train. You kids." As she came over to where he was sitting, he looked up and was surprised to see that she was a small woman, dark and quick moving. She had a gypsy face. "You kids never learn. There's a better way to settle things than with your fists, you know that. A clever person never has had to feel one single blow. Let me see your hands. I can't tell which part of you is hurt the worst." He held up his hands, bloody but unscarred. They were his hands that hadn't landed a single blow. The woman wiped them clean, finger by finger, the way his mother used to wash his hands when he was little. "Fighting is not the answer," she said. "I know," he said, able to speak at last. "Only it wasn't a real fight." "Then I'd hate to see you after a real one," she snapped. She looked at his clean hands. She turned them over. "I bet the other kid didn't get a scratch on him." "No." "You can't win." "I know." "Well, at least you've learnt that." Continuing to babble about the dangers of fighting, she stopped his nose from bleeding, gave him a piece of ice to put on his upper lip, washed his face, and even, in her concern, wet his hair and combed it. She parted his hair on the wrong side and combed it straight across his forehead. This, plus a swollen lip, made his face look strange reflecting the window over by the sink. "Now, you go right home and lie down, you hear me? Don't let that bleeding start up again, and if it does, you put a wadded paper up under your lip like I've showed you." "Yeah, thank you." "And don't fight anymore." "I won't." He tried to smile. "If I can possibly help it." "You kids." He went outside, and for the first time he knew what real relief was. It was a relief so great that the whole world looked different to him, cleaner and sharper. He had not even felt this way when he got out of the hospital after losing his tonsils. It was a kind of light feeling that might come with the lessening of the pull of gravity. He felt that if he wanted to, he could actually float up through the buildings. He imagined himself rising, moving slowly and easily, waving to the startled people in the windows, smiling to them. His body was the lightest, most unburdened thing in the whole world. Strings would be required in a minute to hold him down onto the ground. He walked slowly back to his street, holding the ice cube, which the lady had wrapped up in a little square of cloth, against his lip. As he rounded the corner, he saw Ezzy and Dick Fellaini and Dutch Richards standing by the mailbox. Ezzy had his back to Mouse. He was saying to Dutch, "Oh, come on, give me the ball. Don't you want to see me do this trick?" "Frankly, no." "Come on, Dutch, if I had a new ball and you wanted to do the trick, Mouse came up and lowered his ice cube. "Well, Hammerman fought me." Dutch stopped bouncing the ball, and Ezzy spun round, his trick forgotten. "You what? You fought Hammerman?" Ezzy asked, surprised. Mouse nodded. Ezzy straightened. "You fought Hammerman?" "Yeah." Mouse knew that Ezzy had a secret fear that he, as Mouse's best friend, might be called to participate in the fight. Mouse knew Ezzy was especially afraid that he might have to take on Peachy, the boy in the black sweatshirt. Now it was hard for Ezzy to believe that this danger had passed. "Where was his fight?" Ezzy asked. "What happened? Come on, tell me about it." "Well, it was in front of the Rialto," Mouse said. His swollen lip made his voice sound strange, or perhaps it was the strangeness of what he was saying. He stopped and put the ice cube back against his lip. The Saturday traffic seemed loud in the streets. 2 boys on motorcycles passed. Ezzy glanced impatiently at them for interrupting, and then prompted eagerly. "So, go on, tell us." "Well, I went over to the Rialto looking for Hammerman, and..." "You went looking for him?" Ezzy asked. "Let him tell it, Ez. Let him tell it," Dutch said. "Well, I went over there looking for him," Mouse continued. "And we met in front of the Rialto, and we had a short fight, and it's over now." Mouse thought that those were the most comforting words he'd ever heard. "How short was this fight?" Ezzy asked. I mean, in blows. How many blows, Mouse? Do you remember? Or was it so many that you couldn't... 5, Mouse said. 5? The hush of Ezzy's voice made 5 the most important number that there ever was. 2 in the stomach, 1 on the breastbone, right about here. He put his hand over the exact spot, and 2 in the face. There was no need to point out where those blows had landed. You took all those blows? Mouse nodded. Did you fall down or what? No, I didn't fall. Well, he said truthfully. I would have fallen if the Rialto Theatre hadn't been there. And I staggered around, but I never actually went down. Ezzy and Dutch and Dick were looking at him. It was a strange sensation for a minute. It was as if they were not looking at him at all, but what was going on inside him. They had all four wanted X-ray eyes at one time or another, and now Mouse suddenly felt they had the feeling that the other 3 had got them. He shrugged self-consciously and said, well, I better go and get another ice cube. This one's about gone. He started walking, and Ezzy left the others and followed him. Listen, I want to hear some more about this fight. What was it really like? I mean, did he say anything? Or what? You haven't told me everything. Mouse turned and looked at Ezzy, squinting in the sunlight. He wet his swollen lip with his tongue. It was some sort of honourable thing, Ezzy. A what? An honourable thing. Hammerman? Honourable? Mouse nodded. He knew that he was not going to be able to explain it to Ezzy. He wasn't even sure he understood it himself now, but at that moment, he and Marv Hammerman had met in front of the Rialto, it being clearly and simply a matter of honour. He wanted to explain. Hammerman's not like I thought, Ez. That's all I'm trying to say. Are we talking about the same Hammerman? Ezzy's face had gotten pinker with puzzlement. Marv Hammerman. He looked down at his tennis shoes, which were splattered with blood. He couldn't even see where he'd written air vent now. Still looking at his shoes. I don't even know what Hammerman is like. It's strange, Ez. I can't explain it in words. Quit fooling now. What happened? How bad was it? As he threw out his hands in an old gesture of agitation he saw his grandfather use daily. Tell me! Well, Mouse began, and then he trailed off. He tried to think of something to tell Ezzy, but he couldn't. He knew how Ezzy felt, cheated at not knowing the details of the ending. He had felt the same way one time when he'd been watching a television show. Right at the most exciting part, a news bulletin about hijacked airplane had come on. Mouse never got to see how the story came out. His mother had said, well, you know the dog rescued the boy, even I can tell you that. Yeah, but I wanted to see it happen, Mouse had replied. Mouse tried to smile with his swollen lip. He shrugged his shoulders and said, well, Ezzy, he could have made it a lot worse. Ezzy could not understand what was happening, but for some reason, even though Mouse was no longer a tragic figure, no longer marked by destiny, he had not shrunk back into his normal size like Mr. Steen. Even standing there with a bloody jacket and a swollen lip and wet hair that still had coal marks in it, Mouse seemed bigger. It was such a strong impression that Ezzy wondered if Mouse had actually gotten taller. He wanted to stand back to back with Mouse in front of a mirror and measure. Mouse started slowly up steps. Despite the light feeling of his body, his legs weren't working as well as usual. Ezzy said quickly, I'll get an ice cube for you. I'm alright, as I can... No, I want to get it. I want to get you it. Ezzy went up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. Mouse waited at the bottom, resting his weight on the metal banister. He felt strange. It wasn't the swollen lip, or the new part in his hair, or the lightness of his body. He sometimes wished in the past 2 days that he wasn't himself. And it now seemed that this wish had come true. He almost had to remind himself who he was. I, Benjamin Forley, am alive and well. He let the air out of his lungs with a long sigh. I, Benjamin Forley, have survived. Dick Flaney called, hey, Benji, you guys want to play the ball? Flaney was bouncing the basketball, twisting it in such a way that it came back to him as it bounced. Sure? Even though he was not sure his legs were going to be able to cooperate with the plan. Well, come on then. I'm waiting for Ezzy. Dutch and Dick Flaney waved and started down the sidewalk. Mouse waited by the stairs. Ez, come on, he called after a moment. Ezzy appeared at the window. Hey, can I have a ham sandwich? Yeah, if you want. Come on. You want one? No. He realised suddenly he was hungry after all. Actually, yeah, Ez, I'll have one. Ezzy came back to the window. Mustard? Relish? There's some lettuce in a plastic bag and a couple of okra pickles. Don't care, Ez. Just make it and come on, will you? I'm coming! Only if you're going to make a sandwich, then you might as well make a sandwich. Mouse waited, and after a minute, Ezzy came out of the apartment with the sandwiches. The ice cube's in my pocket, he said. Mouse fished the ice cube out of Ezzy's shirt pocket, brushed the lint off it, and twisted it into the square of cloth. Then he took his sandwich and said, let's go. Right? As they walked down the street, Ezzy took a bite of his sandwich, then turned round to make sure that the pickles weren't going to fall out. He shook his head. And you thought, Hammerman. A passing bus blocked out the answer, which was, well, not really Ez. And anyway, Ezzy was already starting to walk faster down the sidewalk, holding his sandwich in the crook of his arm for safety. Race you, Benny, Ezzy said. It surprised Ezzy for a moment that he'd said Benny instead of Mouse. Then he broke into a run. Garbage Dog was sitting in the shadow of the steps, but as soon as he heard the sound of running, he got up and came out quickly. He looked down the street, and he saw the two boys running towards him, and after a minute, Garbage Dog started running too. Garbage Dog ran down the middle of the sidewalk. He heard the boys getting closer behind him, and he ran faster. He was getting worried. The boys caught up with him. The three of them ran a few steps together, and then the boys passed. Ears back, Garbage Dog began to run faster. His wild eyes rolled to the two boys because he didn't know why they were running. Then, suddenly, the boys slowed down to turn into the alley. As he said, "Here's GD," and dropped the crust of his sandwich. Garbage Dog managed to stop. He came back and circled the crust. And here's something for me too. Another piece of crust and half a slice of ham. Watching the boys, Garbage Dog began to eat. He saw the boys disappear laughing behind the bakery, and after a moment, he hurried after them to join them. The end. That is all 10 chapters of the 18th Emergency. I hope you enjoyed.